what's up guys? Thank you so much for clicking on this video. If you are new to my channel, thank you so much. I am so happy that you're here. Please consider liking and subscribing. If you are coming back, hi, nice to see you again. I am so happy that you've decided to click on another video of mine. We have got such a fun topic to cover. I don't know how much of it you guys can see, but I am wearing my favorite shirt today, which is my pentagram shirt. And that's in honor of today's topic. So if you guys follow me on TikTok, I recently posted a video on there that went way more viral than I had expected, which is exciting and fun and kind of reminded me why I used to love TikTok so much, because it sparks discourse. It's fun interacting with people. There have been so many duets and people using the sound, and it's been so fun watching all of them. If you guys don't follow me on TikTok, I'll link to the one that I'm talking about in the description of this video, and I'll also put my handle here so you guys can follow me on there and see what it is that I'm talking about. And if you guys have followed me on there for any length of time, then I talk a lot on my TikTok about being raised Christian and the impact that that had on me and why I left the church, etc., etc. So now I consider myself a mystic atheist. I had looked into Satanism before, for one thing, because I love rebel counterculture, and for another thing, I had heard about the good work that the Satanic Temple in specific were doing, and it really got me curious. So I had looked into it in the past, and recently I've been kind of considering it again ever since making this viral TikTok. I don't know, we'll see. For one thing, there are no local chapters in Los Angeles where I live anymore. And for another thing, I don't really get on board with all their subversive rituals. It's just not really my scene, but I do love all their activism, so yeah, I don't know.
Join us, Beckett. Join the Satanic Temple. You know you want to.
Anyway, so that's what we're talking about today.
Satanism.
So we're gonna go down and I'm gonna give you guys a little history lesson. Let's dive right in. So Satanism has existed in America for a very long time, and there are several different sects of practicing Satanists, and it can go in many different directions. There are atheistic and theistic Satanists, which just means some of them believe in the deity of Satan, and some don't. But mostly Satanism in the United States was started as a kind of anti-Christian hegemony counterculture. So it was very popular with the punk scene and the metal scene and anyone who was considered rebel and nonconformist and anti-establishment. Are you kidding me? I hate this apartment. So the Church of Satan was the first large-scale popular Satanist movement in the United States that was established around the Satanic Bible, which was written by Anton LaVey. Now, I haven't read the Satanic Bible, but from what I understand, it teaches egotheism, which is basically the deification of the self. So it's presenting yourself as the most powerful influence in your life, not like some grander, greater spirit of God or whatnot. The Church of Satan was established in 1966, and it kind of sparked this whole religious reactionary movement that you may have heard of in the past called the Satanic Panic. Now, this was a primarily white suburban mom thing between like 1980 and like 1995 or so, where suburbanites were freaking out under the misguided impression that there were insidious satanic cults existing throughout America, spearheaded by like children's caregivers, so like babysitters and daycares and schools, where apparently people within those organizations were sexually abusing children, which is a serious accusation, murdering children, which is also a serious accusation, and also drinking their blood in order to give sacrifice to their god of Satan, and for like prolonged youth and life, I guess. I don't know. It hasn't really gone away. It's kind of found a resurgence with this whole like Q and pedophiles and Democrats drinking children's blood resurgence. So there's that. But it was hugely popular in the 1980s and 90s. and caused like mass hysteria over things that were just pop culture. Like Dungeons and Dragons was supposedly a gateway for kids into these kind of satanic sex cults. Rock music, obviously, extreme hardcore rock music like punk and metal, of course. I mean, but then you had people in the Ponk and the Runk. Ponk and the Runk. So then you had some people in like the rock and the punk scenes who were subverting this by kind of embracing it and joking about it. So you had like Ozzy Osbourne biting off the head of a chicken, but none of it had to do with actual Satan or devil worship. Okay, so the thing about the Satanic Panic is that it was an era in American history that was akin to like the Red Scare in the 1950s and 60s, where people were rounded up and accused of belonging to oppositional political parties like the Communist Party and accused of wanting to destroy the US and like secret spy rings and things like that. And people were blacklisted and put in jail and lives were ruined. So akin to that, akin to the Salem witch trials. So it's kind of like the modern day Salem witch trials, because this actually led to arrests of people who were child caregivers. So people who ran preschools, people who taught at preschools and schools and daycares, just complete fabrications and accusations with no founding in reality. And yet these people were brought before the actual legal system and tried and sentenced, and lives were ruined. So very much like the Salem witch trials. And this saw a great rise in fundamentalist Christianity and Christian interference in political process. So like we see today, the right-wing evangelicals, that's kind of where this came from, although they've been around longer than that and just gaining momentum since then. And also claims of blood libel that was levied against Jews back in like the 1st century of the current era. So it just crazy. So what these white suburbanites were so concerned about was satanic ritual abuse, which was supposedly coercing children into taking part in ritualistic sexual abuse and other types of abuse, which was not happening because of rock music. And in most cases, probably wasn't happening overall, because later documents coming out of investigations later on found that a lot of the kids who were interviewed in levying these accusations were coerced by law enforcement to say that the accused were doing things to them that wasn't true. So just think about being like a 6-year-old kid or something, and you're sitting in an interrogation room and you're not giving the answers that the investigators want you to give. So they keep guiding you and telling you, well, if you just say this, then we can let you go back to your mom. If you just say this, then you can just go home. So this is kind of what was happening. If you think about modern day coercion techniques in getting confessions, that's what they were doing to these kids, because they were trying to scapegoat people, and because there was this whole satanic panic going on and they needed scapegoats. When in reality, probably none of that was going on, especially at preschools and daycares and by babysitters. And definitely not brought about by playing Dungeons and Dragons or rock music. Hey guys, I'm just busy editing and I wanted to quickly mention this podcast that I recently finished listening to since I recorded this video. It's called Uncover Season 6 Satanic Panic. So it goes into depth about the Satanic Panic as it happened in a small town in Canada, but the effects of that were so widespread. It kind of happened that way in a lot of different places. And it does mention a beach town in Los Angeles that was also affected during the 80s and 90s. And so I thought it was just a really great informative look at the consequences of these kinds of mass hysteria events. And yeah, the people who were most impacted and affected by it are still feeling those effects to this day. And a lot of the elements and indoctrination that happened during Satanic Panic haven't really gone away. So yeah, go check that podcast out if you want to learn more about the way that it affected communities and still happens to do so. So, all right, that's enough for me. Back to the video. So why am I talking about this? Well, I have a theory that is rooted in sexism Okay, so this is a doozy. Are you ready? So admittedly, some of this does come from stuff that I learned in reading and then afterwards researching the material in the Da Vinci Code, having to do with like the chalice of the goddess and the divine feminine and things like that, and Jesus's historical bloodline. I don't believe that Jesus was a real person, but I do think that there have been female avatars, much like we've had all these male avatars throughout history of divinity, like Jesus and Buddha and Muhammad and things like that. We've had female ones as well. You just don't hear about them because they've been written out of the texts. They've been demonized and completely excised from all of our historical and theistic texts. You see this in a lot of tribal communities when Christian theology enters, and they completely rewrite the myths about the goddesses and the practice of worshiping divine femininity to fit the Christian narrative of the one true God who's male, who has one son who's male, and just cutting out any references to divine femininity. A lot of the divine feminine figureheads, when this rewriting happens, become goddesses of sensuality and sexuality and reproduction, which is also part of being the divine feminine. I mean, when you think about it, one of the most divine qualities of femininity is that we have the ability to create life from our own bodies. That's kind of where goddess worship comes from, is the idea that womanhood is inherently divine because of this miraculous process of creating another human from, ostensibly nothing. While sex and reproduction is part of that, it is not the entire picture. And so some scholars suggest that the right side up pentagram, like the one that I'm wearing, where the top point points upward instead of downward, so upside down pentagram pointing downward is the sign of the devil, and then pointing upward, some scholars theorize represents the divine feminine and the divine feminine chalice. So like in the Da Vinci Code, the chalice of the, So how does all that apply to Christian theology? Well, the devil, or Satan, as we think of him today, was popularized by Dante, right? So our modern understanding of what hell is and who the devil is comes from Dante's Inferno. It did not exist before then, but it has been adopted as the agreed upon version of hell and the devil. These two things, though, hell and the devil, were not mentioned in this capacity in the Bible itself. Jesus does mention hell, but he speaks of it in a way that it could be interpreted, and this is ancient text that we're talking about, written in dead languages that no one speaks anymore and has been translated a million times over, and we've also lost a lot of the text and a lot of the context and things like that. But anyway, and not to mention that a lot of the books, a lot of the scrolls that were discovered to compose the Bible, a lot of those were left out, so there is even further context that we're still missing and will probably never see the light of day. So putting all that aside, so the word in the actual text that Jesus uses is the word Gehenna, which basically equates to like an undesirable place, like the garbage dump. It's like where you would throw the stuff that you don't want anymore. So I am of the opinion that when hell is referenced in the Bible, especially in the New Testament, it pertains to those people who do bad things, like throw rocks at prostitutes, may as well be in the garbage dump because they're garbage people. Not that they are condemned to eternal suffering, like it has in like a fiery pit, which is how it's been modernized, right? So getting back to the divine feminine. So when you think back on who this character of Satan actually is in the Bible, it's not evil. The word Satan itself doesn't actually mean evil or devil. It just means antagonist. So if we're thinking of like a spiritual hierarchy, then we have God at the very top, and then we have this antagonist. That's not necessarily good or evil. It's just kind of neutral. And then when you think about the times in the Bible in which the antagonist actually appears, it's supposedly to tempt people into things. So like in the Garden of Eden, when it appears to Eve to tempt her to eat the fruit of knowledge. But it's like wouldn't that be a good thing? Like, why would we want to live in subservient ignorance as a species forever? Yeah, I want to know. I want the knowledge, right? In that case, Satan is helping Eve to break free of her chains and step into full knowledge and wisdom, right? That's a good thing. Living in ignorance is a bad thing. And then again, when he appears in front of, I think it's Isaiah, or in the book of Isaiah. Gosh, I don't remember. I'm not a Christian. I should know these things because I was raised Christian. But when God is testing him and in telling him he has to kill his son, right? And at the end of the story, he doesn't. He gets really close, and then God says, wait, I was just testing you. It's okay. You don't have to kill your son. But he was testing his faith and to see if he would do whatever it takes to obey God in all cases, right? Even if it means taking the life of his own son, which is insane to me. What kind of God asks you to do that? Don't even care that he's not serious, that he's just testing him, but why even ask? What is the point? I thought this God was supposed to be all-knowing. Shouldn't you know the level of his faith and commitment? But anyway, so in that story, Satan appears before Isaiah and tells him, hey, don't do this. You don't have to kill your son. Come on, man. You have a mind of your own. You don't have to do it. And that's a bad thing somehow. And then again, Satan appears in the Bible before Jesus when Jesus is walking through the desert for 40 days and 40 nights, starving himself, and tempts him with food and water. I mean, when you think about it, that's the humane thing to do. Hey, dude, you're starving. You're gonna die. I can see it. Here, have some food, have some water. Don't kill yourself. And yet, that's a bad thing. So ultimately, Satan represents common sense and free thought, and not just blind faith. And the reason that I think that has to do with the divine feminine is because the church and many religions in general have eradicated any references to divine femininity in order to subject women to systemic oppression that has persisted over millennia. So, I don't know. Maybe Satan's a she. Maybe she's a female. Because she stands for subverting all of that. Right? Systemic oppression and acting on blind faith without any consideration of facts or science. And that's what Satanism stands for today still. So I became interested in the Satanic Temple when I first read their 7 tenets several years ago. We are so conditioned growing up in this society, especially as an American Christian, to view anything that has the word Satan attached to it as bad and evil. And for one thing, because I think it is all about subversion and rebelling against the powers that be, which in this case is the church. So that's what my recent viral TikTok was about. It was listing the 7 tenets and not telling you until the end what they were from, because I think that they are based in a sense of truth and justice and love and compassion that Christianity pales in comparison to. So I'm going to read you the 7 tenets as they stand, as written. Number 1, one should strive to act with compassion and empathy toward all creatures in accordance with reason. 2, the struggle for justice is an ongoing and necessary pursuit that should prevail over laws and institutions. 3, one's body is inviolable, subject to one's will alone. 4, the freedoms of others should be respected, including the freedom to offend. To willfully and unjustly encroach upon the freedoms of another is to forego one's own. 5, beliefs should conform to one's best scientific understanding of the world. One should take care never to distort scientific facts to fit one's beliefs. 6, people are fallible. If one makes a mistake, one should do one's best to rectify and resolve any harm that may have been caused. And 7, every tenet is a guiding principle designed to inspire nobility in action and thought. The spirit of compassion, wisdom, and justice should always prevail over the written or spoken word. I feel like a lot of people in general would agree with all those things, and only because it has the name Satan attached to it would they reject it in any way? And as we should, I think we should all agree with every tenet that is stated there, because they're all based in scientific reasoning and understanding and compassion and empathy.
Which are all good things.
So yeah, I have a lot of respect for modern Satanists. I think that they're all super chill, cool, awesome people. All the ones that I've ever known have just been like the kindest, most generous people, more than most Christians I've ever known. And I've known a lot of Christians because I grew up in that sphere. I had to get over a lot of internal biases that I had about Satanism when I first started learning about it, because growing up Christian,
Obviously.
but the more that I've embraced it, the more, I see that these are all just guiding principles that we should all strive to live our lives by. I mean, when you think about it, the 10 Commandments are bullshit. I mean, of course murder is bad. You have to tell me thou shalt not murder? I don't need a God to tell me that, okay? So the 10 Commandments appear twice in the text of the Bible. It's like God gave them and then he said, oh, never mind, no, those I don't want you to follow anymore. Here, I'm going to replace them with these for some reason. Or it was an oral tradition written down by two different people. But I digress. So this is the original 10th commandment as it was written. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is thy neighbor's. Of course, only speaking about men, because men are property owners and they own their wives. Okay, and here's the 4th commandment of the revised version. All that openeth the matrix is mine, and every firstling among thy cattle, whether ox or sheep, that is male.
Huh?
So God is claiming the first male born of a man's herd of oxen and sheep? Why? And made a commandment about it. I'm so confused. Also, we have 2 commandments here about unleavened bread and bringing the first fruit of your harvest as an offering to God. Very, very different from what I read growing up. Anyway, I think that's all on this for now. It got a little weird, a little weirder than I expected. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. Was Satan a woman? Did you grow up with the impression that Satanism was bad or evil? Let me know what you think. I want to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much to watching to the end. If you liked this video, please consider liking and subscribing. I am still a growing channel and it really helps me out really a lot. And I appreciate you. Follow me on TikTok for more short form content, and I'll be back next Wednesday with another video. All right, I'll see you guys later.